Welcome, everyone, through all time and space to an all new episode of Weebs on the Weekends, a podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look at anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode will be covering our most anticipated anime for the 2021 spring anime season and give our thoughts on whether the 2011 anime Anohana, the flower that we saw that day, should be resurrected or reburied. My name is Jay Johnson. I'm a part-time weeb and full-time English language sensei. And with me, as always, is my co-host Sam Martinez, part-time weeb and full-time automail mechanic. Now, Sam, we've actually been on, what do you want to call it, hiatus for the past 3 weeks. So when
A
it actually
scheduled hiatus, yeah.
scheduled, yeah, we did talk about it last episode. But yeah, scheduled hiatus to give us a break, maybe get some medical stuff in order, but maybe feel the pains of maybe some vaccinations. But I was thinking, what was like a news story maybe that you felt that we should talk about? Because the one that I thought interesting that I missed out last time, because you did the whole, does Jay know what he's talking about? Or does Jay know the price is right? And I failed that.
Yes.
And it was about the large print celebratory, I guess is the right word, but spelled celebratory printing of the first 3 issues of Attack on Titan in like a giant Titan size booklet, I guess would be the word again.
If you call something that big a booklet, yeah.
Right,
It's
yeah,
weird.
yeah. So I think it was 150 copies of it, and it sold out in under 10 minutes for
Holy
a
crap.
ridiculous amount of money. But were there any news stories that you saw over the past 3 weeks?
I would say aside from that, I think we did talk a little bit about it. There was a there was a PV that we had just spoken about. I can't remember what it was. It'll probably come back to me later on. But the one thing that did jump out to me not that long ago was that Netflix was making an anime adaptation over a comic book series that Keanu Reeves himself had written, known as Berserk, and apparently Keanu is going to be the main actor or the main voice. I'm sorry, one of the main characters in this new series, and it reminded me of Umbrella Academy in the sense that you would have this artist in this other realm of entertainment making a splash in the comic book world so big that it gets its own visual adaptation, and with Keanu's name being behind it, especially with all the John Wick films, it seems to have that same vibe. I can see it being popular if given a proper interpretation in anime form.
For sure, because we're in like the probably the tail end of the what you would call it like the Keanu-sance, because did
Yes.
most recently like Johnny Silverhand and Cyberpunk 2077. He's doing the John Wick stuff. He's done like some like soft core horror movies recently as well. So given that he's a anime fan or a weeb, if you would like to call him, that he's tackling this, especially given that a lot of actors will go into like the things that they really love into the side. We know like Michael B. Jordan is a ridiculous weeb, and some other
Yes.
like known like Samuel L. Jackson as well. So I'm glad that he's actually taking this time in his career to expand into like a genre that he's probably cared about for a long time, but hasn't been accepted so much for. And even if it inspires Hollywood to make a live action adaptation of it later on in a few years, I'm definitely down with that as well. Let's see. Other than that, we know now that the My Hero Academia movie, the third one, has a official title. I think it's World Hero Mission, and it also dropped
Okay.
a teaser. Let's see. Any other news stories that caught my attention? I mean, we're going to talk about the spring anime season, so that's what's been really dominating the news. But anything else, Sam, that you want to talk about for news stories wise?
One thing that was interesting to me that sort of ties it into Onohana was that there was a Resident Evil reboot happening, And the only reason why I say it was a good tie was because of how close video games and anime are related. Because when I was doing research on Onohana, the production company that did Onohana, they are big in the video game industry. It's made by Polygon, which is known for their video game websites, Kotaku, Joystick, and The Escapist. So that was kind of cool. And it also is a lead into the anticipated top five anime because there is an anime coming out this season, The World Ends With You, that is an anime adaptation of a video game that made a big splash in 2007.
All right, segue. Talk about a great segue, Sam. Yeah, so
Yes.
the time codes are always going to be in the descriptions below. But yes, we're talking about the upcoming anime season for spring 2021. We have our top five most anticipated lists to share with each other. So, as always, whenever we make these lists, we have three things that we can say to each other. One, it is bench, meaning that when Sam tells me his number five and it's not on my list, I'll say bench, meaning that it's not on my list. He tells me his number five and I'll say yeet, meaning that it's higher up on my list. Or it is a Kobe, meaning it is exactly in the same spot. So, Sam, what made your number five for anticipated this upcoming season?
This was tough. I would say my number five. It's Tokyo Revengers.
Okay, that is a short yeet
A short yeet? why do you why do you say short yeet?
because it's my
Oh,
number four.
okay, okay. We'll save it for when you talk about it for your
All right.
number four. But what was your number five?
Yeah, so you're about to say yeet as well, but my number five is the season two of Megalobox, subtitled.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's a short yeet for me too.
All right, so Megalobox is higher on your list than
Yes.
yeah. Let's talk about that first, then. So tell me about it. Why is it? Why did it make? Oh yeah, why is it higher up on your list?
Mainly because of how well season one did for Megalobox. Honestly, I was still am just a little bit skeptical because at the end of that season, it seemed to have wrapped everything up with the trailer for Nomad, which is what they're calling the second season. It seems as though they are having him start all over again. It's definitely a jump forward in time about 5 years or so. So things have definitely happened. I'm interested to see why Joe sort of fell from grace. And it also seems to be delving into the themes with the immigrants that they were dealing with earlier. Again, it seems as though like some heavy themes are being dealt with. So I am very interested to see what happened. And as I said, because season one did so good, was done so well, I'm very excited about it. But why is Tokyo Revengers ahead of Megalobox for you, Jay?
Oh well, I just wanted to share my thoughts about Megalobox real quick
Yes.
because
Okay.
I do like that aspect of the fall from grace, like you said, because that happens with athletes naturally. They have their time in the spotlight and then they just drop off, and generally they take their hits and then retire wealthy. But
Oh, so like I guess like a good example of that would be Conor McGregor right now.
oh yeah, perfect example. Yeah, so like whenever you reach the peak, the apex, and again, that's what Gearless Joe did. He tackled the Megalobox tournament. Is that what the tournament's called?
I
Megalobox?
think the tournament was called Megalobox.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, okay. So, but yeah, it's like 13 episodes the first season. It's like a very digestible season. Like again, the choreography is done by TMS Entertainment, who is I guess known most recently by Dr. Stone, and it's like beautiful, fight scenes. Essentially, that's what boxing is, and it's a beautifully done series. Joe is a likable protagonist. Don't think he gets enough credit because of his devil may care attitude, and and we talked before about the art style. It's kind of mimicking old animation styles, but it's done digitally recently.
Yes.
So it's based off of like the manga series, but it's kind of like an original take on it. So I put it on number 5 just because it's like one of those. It's one of those seasons series that I'm guaranteed I'm going to watch. So it just breaks my top 5 just for that reason. But
Okay.
talking about a little bit higher on my list, Tokyo Revengers. This is another manga-based series. Hasn't been around for so long, so it actually is higher up my list for that reason because its manga premiered back in 2017, so it
Ooh.
hasn't even sold that well. So I'm more curious about why this was chosen over a lot of other more successful weekly Shonen Jump properties. So that's why it's so high up on my list. But the simple premise of it is that the MC ends up in the past. Essentially, it's a time travel story after his girlfriend is murdered by a gang of vicious criminals, and he's stuck in the past, determined to change the future and prevent her future murder. So it's a very interesting concept. He's like a delinquent dealing with the underground of like Tokyo City. It's like action sci-fi, so it has like all those markers of like a good like progression to the story. And since it's based on a manga series that's still ongoing, it has 21 volumes right now, so it's probably going to be sticking around for a long time. But why is it your number 5, Sam?
It was pretty much because of the premise, like you said. It's essentially erased meets delinquents in high school,
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting because he's infiltrating the gang that is known for killing his girlfriend. So no, I'm sorry, not. So it's mainly 91 Days meets Erased because that's essentially the premise of 91 Days, where uh, the main character, his parents were killed by a gang, and he grows up and he infiltrates the gang, and we see him trying to kill the Don's son, but he has grown a relationship with the Don, so he starts to be conflicted. However, with the promos and the trailers that I've seen with Tokyo Revengers, it seems to be a good revenge tale, sort of like Count of Monte Cristo, but in with delinquents. So I'll be very interested to see if there's going to be any head scratching plans or if it's just going to be good old fashioned beatdowns. The animation looks really well, so I'm very interested in seeing where it's going to go.
That's our number 5 and 4s. So Sam, your number 3, what is it?
My number three is Fumetsu no Anata. It's the we've done a couple of news segments about it. It has to do with the immortal dog and the kid.
Wow, that's nowhere on my list, so that's a miss, I guess. Uh, yeah, not to ask you, but do you know what the English translation of that is?
I don't remember.
Okay,
While
well,
I'm looking for it,
mhm.
mind telling us what your number three is?
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear because like I was like, why did that not come up on my list? But yeah, number 3 is actually Click.
Click. So
Yeah,
that's a bench for me too. What's Click
right.
about?
Yeah, so this is actually like again, it's like in the middle of my list, but this is actually an original fantasy property that is actually coming out of China. It's done
Oh
by
yeah.
How Liners Animation League, and it's so high up on my list because right now there are actually for this season 7 Chinese animes that have production rights or publication rights, not publication, broadcasting rights in Japan. So to say that Click is going to be like maybe the spearhead of this movement, but this seems like the season where Chinese anime is actually going to make a big splash. And I'm
Okay.
and this one caught my attention because it has such a I don't know if you remember the series Sam Triple X Holic. Triple X Holic. It was kind of
I remember when it was popular. I didn't watch it though.
right. So it's kind of like a Stephen King Needful Deeds. Is that the full title? But yeah, so the premise is the two male leads have superpowers and they're
Okay.
running a camera store where they accept like requests from clients and they receive like a photo from the client, and their superpower allows them to go into the photo and basically rewrite what's ever wrong with the client's request. So
Holy smokes.
it's a
That's
weird,
wow.
yeah. So there's a really good PV of it online right now, and again, it's a ONA, so it's scheduled right now for 11 episodes. It's premiering on April 30th. So this is so high up on my list because it feels like this season everyone's going to overlook Chinese anime. So I just wanted to call attention to that right now. So Sam, did you
Okay.
finally get around to that English title?
Yes, it's called To Your Eternity.
Oh, that one. By the writer of Death Note, right?
Is that by the writer? I thought the writer of Death Note did.
Oh
It
no,
was
I'm
the one
thinking of
about the angels.
oh,
Yeah,
I'm thinking of Platinum's End. My bad.
Platinum's.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Tell me about your number three, To Your Eternity. My bad.
A mysterious being is sent to Earth with no emotions or identity. It's able to take a single shape around it that has a strong impetus or strong impact. And at first it's a sphere, then it imitates a rock, and then time goes on. There's a lone injured wolf that's limping. It takes the form of the wolf and it meets a boy, and basically saying how the boy has an impact on the creature known as it, and then the boy ends up dying, and then it takes the forms of the boy, and then goes on and continues its existence, and basically how it interacts with other people and things of that nature. So like the trailer seems to be interesting, and it's definitely something that I want to at least look into, because I think you made the comparison to it where it was sort of like Call of the Wild, or it was that one movie that came out that had to deal with the very quote unquote first domesticated wolf. I can't remember what that movie was called. And I'm indifferent to animals, so I can see this being a good anime for animal lovers. So I am mainly watching it out of curiosity to see why people like animals so much, and just to see how they make this being grow emotionally and things of that nature.
Gotcha. All right, that's a fair interest to putting up on the third spot on your list. So, mine is Click. Yours was To Your Eternity. So, what is in your number two spot, Sam?
Shaman King!
That's a bitch.
It
All right, tell me about the. Not. It's not a reboot. Well, it's what a.
is. It is.
Oh, okay, a reboot of the yeah. What 19 or the 2003? I believe that's when the original series released. But yeah, Shaman King. What's up with that?
So exactly. What's the Shaman King? So essentially, the Shaman King, it follows a protagonist known as Yo. He comes from a line of shamans, and essentially, this series is this whole tournament arc of these other people who come from shaman families, so that they can compete with one another to gain the title known as Shaman King, so that the world of the shamans can choose which direction that they want to go in regards to how they operate within the real world. And it's interesting seeing from what I've seen in the early days. It was interesting seeing Yo grow and him learn a little bit more about the world of shamans, the different type of shamans that there were, and it was mainly him trying to figure out the type of shaman that he wanted to be, because he had that lackadaisical attitude that Shikamaru had. Even though he wasn't as smart, he was almost as gifted as he was, while being as lazy. So, and the thing is, like, he's put in situations where, again, he's just running into these different type of shamans, and it affects him to push him to figure out what type of shaman that he wants to be. I didn't finish the original series, but I do know that the original series had finished, but the manga was still going on. So it was around that same time as the first Full Metal Alchemist, where the first Full Metal Alchemist, they made their own ending while the manga kept going. So this iteration of Shaman King is essentially the Brotherhood version of uh, Shaman King. So essentially, the intention is to animate all 31 or 35 volumes of the franchise. So I am looking forward to it to see how the work was originally intended to be.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Yeah, Shaman King and Full Metal Alchemist and Soul Eater kind of fell into that category back in the day of like overlapsing the manga release, so they took it upon themselves to write in their own ending. So yeah, it made my honorable mentions, but again, it's not strong enough to hit. Not that nostalgic for it because it always felt a little bit of the weaker version of Yu Yu Hakusho for me. So maybe I was maybe aged out of it by the time,
Okay.
maybe 2003. Again, that's my guess when it came out, but I remember it was probably when four kids television, like with
Yes, for kids.
Ultimate Muscle, Yu-Gi-Oh, some other titles, Pokemon. But yeah, so my number two is probably a bench for you. But sorry, I'm just this is comfort food. My number one and two, but my comfort
Okay.
number two spot is How Not to Summon a Demon Lord Omega.
That was a bench for me. So I have a question. Is this the sequel? Is this like a secondary sequel, the tertiary sequel? Tell me a little bit about how not to summon a demon lord, because I didn't know if this was supposed to be a reboot or how I was supposed to take this.
Yeah, so the same way as that Megalobox has that subtitle of Nomad, Omega is the subtitle for this. So this is a season two, an earnest follow up to season one that
Okay.
premiered back in 2018. And again, this makes my list because I was overly impressed by the first season because one, it's an isekai, but there's so much. It's really hard to nail down when you say something that is just comfort food because you don't have a quantifiable reason why it's good. But for everything that's etchy about it, everything that's not clear about its magic system, the hardcore harem aspect of it, not even hardcore harem aspect of it, but it's just solid in the way that its main character is is breaks the archetype of a isekai protagonist in a way that makes you uncomfortable. It makes you cringe. And he is like an OP gamer, and he understands the world because it's like a world that replicates the game that he was a badass in. But there are elements of it that makes you just laugh at all the isekai tropes because they turn them on the head. So there's a little meta-ness to it,
Okay.
but it's also done by Tezuka Productions. So looking at Dororo Kids on the Slope that they did in collaboration with Mappa. So this is a when you look at the animation of it, it's just so beautiful to look at. So it's like that plus the characters. There's like good music and sound design. So it's just an over um, well-rounded production, and it's enjoyable. Enjoyable to watch. I don't know what more to say about it, but yeah, that's why it's my number two. It's based off a light novel series, and I say go and read it if you enjoy the first 12 episodes. So Sam, we're hitting up your number one now. So what is your number one most anticipated anime of the 2021 spring anime season?
I think you should know what this is, but I'm going to be a bit basic with my number one. It's going to be My Hero.
Oh wow, that no, that okay, that literally okay, that's actually surprised me. That's a
Did
bench for me. No, that's yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just generally shocked because that is not what I guessed at all. So yeah, tell me about it. Why is it hype for you?
I would say mainly because I guess I have recency bias with what's going on in the manga with it's been interesting because with Jujutsu Kaisen, it's been the one work so far that I've been able to watch, even though I read ahead. With me, I feel like I'm so far ahead in my hero that I can go back and finish watch this current season and enjoy it like I have been doing with Jujutsu. Also, with what's going on or what's supposed to be happening this season, it really starts laying down the foundations to some of the bigger arcs that happen later on in the series. I am really looking forward to it because it starts out with not necessarily a tournament arc, but it starts out with a simulated battle arc, which definitely pushes Deku towards a path of growth that definitely brings more aspects to his power. So I'm interested to see how they're going to animate these scenes. It's especially with how they animated the fight with Overhaul. I am really looking forward to the. I forgot what was the word when they have a sort of splash page ish, but on screen. Jay, I forget what that word is. When they put all their money into this
Uh,
scene looks good.
Sakuga.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the Sakuga that is in this simulated battle arc.
Got you. Yeah, I just remembered why what I thought your number one was going to be isn't your number one because you didn't actually watch SSS Gridman. So why would?
No, I did watch SS Gridman
Oh,
and SS Dynazon or Dynazenon. That's in my honorable mention. So I am looking forward to it, but it was between that one or Tokyo Revengers. Like that's why I said it was a hard choice for me because
okay.
I yeah.
Got you. Yeah, because I was like, why isn't like an outstanding mecha that I would recommend not your number one? But yeah, so again, my number one is just comfort food for me. It's Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun. So I know it's not on your list since we're on our number ones, but man, this is one of like three anime that I've watched in the past decade that made me go read the manga. So
Oh
when
yeah.
My Hero Academia premiered and it stopped after season two, I went to read the manga and I've been reading weekly of that. Same thing with Tower of God, of the 300 and some chapters at the time. After the anime premiered, I went to read all those and like finished 300 chapters in like 2 months. And same thing with Irma is, or Welcome to the Demon School, Irma-kun.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds so cringe to say, Irma-kun. Um,
Raccoon.
yeah, I went back to read the manga, and it is so outstandingly good or enjoyable that I've seen the dub, I've seen the sub multiple times, viewing it from its 23 episodes back in 2019. And I'm just so happy that it got a season two because no one was talking about it at the time. This is a Bandai Namco production, and they're
Okay.
generally just known for doing Gintama. Like of their like 20 titles, Gintama takes up 30%. So they don't really do much. So I'm surprised that Irma-kun was animated by them. And the premise is very simple: is that this kid gets sold to an arch demon by his parents, and then the demon turns out all he wanted was a grandson,
Uh,
and the demon sends this human Irma to a demon school to get properly educated about how to pretend to be a demon in like the underworld. So like all off the bat, you have that school slice of life element. There is the antagonism of a human being in the demon world. So there's like the shonen aspect, there's the supernatural aspect, there's the fantasy aspect, and all of it is just comfort. I think Irma was nominated Best Boy 2 years ago. So like everything that adds up to, oh my gosh, this is just leisurely watching, and you can get invested in the colorful world, the characters. The magic system is actually hard set because demons have magic. Irma has to pretend to have magic in a certain way. So that means it's hard coded how he's imitating magic. So like even like small aspects of that, as well as his character is set inside trauma, and that plays into his cheerful disposition. That all shonen protagonists have some kind of tragic backstory, so that you attach to them. But his tragic backstory is that his parents literally
Yeah,
sold him.
sold him off. Yeah.
And then they flash back to other moments that they're just terrible parents and that raised him to be a kind, caring person. So like I can go on and on about it, but
No,
yeah.
no, the premise sounds good. I wanted to ask while we're still on it just a little bit. So with the story, is the demon world different enough to be interesting, or is it more or less ah it's just like regular school, just with weirdos who call themselves demons?
Uh, well, since I just mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the Yu Yu Hakusho kind of comparison that there is a hierarchy. So like all the demons
Okay,
are ranked, so their rank represents their magical capacity,
capabilities, yeah.
yeah, capabilities, but also there are demons that are just they kind of cheat the system, but they also go into the governments or governance of what it means to put order inside the underworld. So it also talks about politics and like it blows up the world very gradually, and I like it very much in that way. So uh yeah, sorry, I'm just hyped for it because the end of season one actually skips an arc forward. So like these first 12 episodes is actually going to be the arc people want to skip over because they're waiting for the next 12 episodes, which season one ending hinted at. So I'm just going to wait for like 12
That's
episodes and
funny.
get jazz for it. But yeah, so the other, yeah, so like you said, my honorable mentions are the SSS Daisen Gone.
Dana Zenon, yep.
Yes. There's also Zombieland Saga Revenge, which is another Studio Mappa production. The World Ends with You, the animation which you mentioned. Netflix is actually dropping like a brand new anime this season called The Way of the House Husband, which I'm very excited for as well. But it just made the cutoff because
Oh, that's the one about the retired yakuza, right?
exactly, yeah, he's a retired yakuza that takes up the life of a house husband. And Shaman King, kind of one of my honorable mentions. I just wanted to mention it because
It's
it's
just kind of there.
yeah, same thing with like Fruit Baskets. It's the final season of Fruit Baskets, so might as well give some shout outs. And oh, the anime that you mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago in your news stories about the Dragon's House Hunter. Dragons,
Oh yeah, yeah, I forgot
yeah,
about that
as
one.
well as coming out this season. Do you have any honorable mentions that I haven't mentioned?
The only one that I have is Steph Sestivus. It's the Roman fighter, where they're talking about the guy who was a Roman slave, and he's basically having to learn how to box so that he can get out of slavery. That's coming out this season too.
Got you. Oh, and I forgot to mention one because it's so out of my head because I really don't care at all about it. But Eden Zero, which is like the
I'm a big fairy tale fan, so like that's also my mentions. But I'm probably gonna watch a couple episodes.
yeah, I mean, it's literally fine. It's literally fine. It's just like so fine. It's like I'm not going to mention it because it's literally just fairy tale. It's literally just Rave Master in a different skin. It's good storytelling. It's sound,
It's fairy tale in space. That's all it is. It's just fairy tale in space.
whatever. But yeah, so that brings an end to the discussion of anime that we're looking forward to for the season. We'll probably come back for a 3 episode test of the anime that we kept track of, and of course, I'm going to talk about My Hero Academia because you're forcing me to watch it. So, anyways, yeah. So let's move on to our 10-year episode review of Onahana, the flower that we saw that day. So, Sam, this
Yes,
is my
please.
pick. And I actually want to. Okay, so I'm going to actually talk about the premise real quick, but then I'm going to do something
Okay.
I don't think I've ever done before. But this premiered back on April 14th, 2011. So we're right under the 10-year anniversary, but that's okay. For 11 episodes, and this is a Japanese original anime. created by another artist collective called the Super Peace Busters, which is also the name of the first episode.
They really did that. Okay.
Yeah. And this is animated by A1 Pictures, directed by Tasuyuki Nage, who is the director of Toradora, which I know him from. He's also the director of Iron Blood Orphans, which you know. So
Oh, seriously?
yeah, so he has
Okay.
a wide range of abilities when it comes to being a director. But the story centers on a group of six high school students, childhood friends who drift apart after one of them passes away, actually dies in an accident. Menma, the leader of the group, Jinta, becomes a recluse, a hikikomori, a shut in because of it. And one day he starts to see the ghost of his dead friend. This is a PG-13 property where in the genre of slice of life, supernatural, available on Funimation, Crunchyroll, and Netflix. So it's available everywhere, usually for free. Polygon said this is one of the best animes of the 2010s. Forbes said this is the best anime of 2011. This is rated a 8.4 on my anime list, ranking 145th, as well as rating a popularity of the 53rd best anime on the website.
Okay.
So,
I
highest
feel like you're
rated.
about to say something that's against everything that you just said.
It's a series where you it is one of those series that you absorb subconsciously being an anime fan, that you hear about the ending of, the twist of, how it builds. You hear about the greatness of it. You want to say, like, you want to defend it because everyone else defends it. And looking at the first three episodes, it's one of those things of you never really understand tragedy. Anime does a lot of things right, and it does tragedy, it does characterization of people very well, it does a lot of things very well. And to say that this is one of the greatest animes of all time, I completely agree with that statement after watching the first three episodes.
Really? Just
And
after watching the
I'm
first three?
yeah, and I'm kind of blown away at that fact because one, the first three episodes of an anime does certain things. This is only an 11 episode series, but looking at the reception, looking at there's a serial novel, there's two mangas, there's a visual novel video game, there's a film in 2013, there's a uh, live action adaptation in 2015. Looking at all these things, I'm just blown away that now I'm revisiting the series, and the slow build of these characters and the idea of what tragedy does to people is so heart wrenchingly sad. It's hard to watch, and I wasn't
Hmm.
really expecting going into this series that's so beloved and getting your heart pulled out of your chest just in like three episodes. Like, you get, like, in episode one, you get a flashback scene of these kids, because again, it's like told in like two time periods when all of them through was together, and then in
Yes.
the future when this girl has died. But to see the art style change very slightly, you see in like the past is like lighter colors, lighter palettes, like the light direction is so like every scene's brightened, or even there.
It's more romanticized.
Yeah, very much so. And that reflects the characters and how they see their past. And then when you jump to the future or the current time, and like everything's sharp, everyone's drab, the color palettes are kind of flushed out or drained. And you get the sense that all these characters, you get introduced to all six of them by the end of episode three, that they're all coping in their own separate way, and they're not friends for a reason. And that's just so sad that anyone can relate to the idea that someone that you were best friends with for multiple years, you no longer talk to. And trying to go back to reconcile is such a hard thing to do. So
No.
that's my rant off the bat. But Sam, tell me your thoughts about. Tell me.
I'm glad that you told me a little bit about it, because I'm like, well, I know Jay likes to see children in turmoil, but this is a little too much. But no, I would say it was just interesting because, as you said, it's just an 11 episode anime. I guess I drank the sauce. I was in my feels. I just wanted to hurt, so I finished it all. And but no, I agree with you in the sense that the first three episodes, they do a good job at introducing all the characters. My favorite one's Popo, by the way. I just really love how he is. I also appreciate how well done the English version was. Did you get a chance to watch the English dub or no?
Wow, I actually wasn't even aware that there was an English dub because I've always heard that Onahana was one of those anime that never got a proper dubbing of it. So yeah, I actually watched the Japanese sub.
Oh, but dude, oh my goodness. I would have to say, like, it feels like a recent work. For instance, they have phrases such as for reals, or I'm trying to remember. I thought I wrote some of them down. Yeah, yeah. Like, there's this one scene where Popo's like, "I need an adult," and he also says phrases like, "We're totally boned," in the sense of, it it's Americanized, but it works with the phrases that they use so that American audiences can relate to the characters. I but saying going back to what you're saying, how trying to reconcile with friends or with people that you've grown accustomed to after tragedy. The thing that came to my mind was, it's sort of like, I don't know what the numbers is for this, but I've heard that with married couples, after they've had a child that died, it's usually harder for them to stay together, that more often than not they end up splitting because of the trauma that they both have, and in order for them to move on. So when you when that when you said how the shared trauma that the friends have, that they basically split up for a reason, that they don't try to reconcile with one another, it definitely makes sense why that's the case. I mean, it's it doesn't necessarily have to have trauma, but people, I mean, for instance, you don't you aren't, well, I know I'm not still friends with some of the people that I've were friends with in middle school, because life happens, you age up, you grow apart, and so I can only imagine it's that much more harder to try to keep friendships alive with a friend group that you had where one of your friends had died, especially with the issues that go along with it. Even though it's good in interpreting, in having the audience show empathy for what it feels, for the feelings that go on, there are some issues that I've had with the series in terms of how Menma as a ghost, like what her restrictions are, especially earlier on, and Jinta doesn't really make an effort to figure out what those were, because he mainly writes it off as him, because he mentioned her as his summer beast, right? Because he's in the middle of puberty. So whenever she shows up and she does things, he just writes it off as his mind playing tricks on him. But then we have scenes where she's literally like eating food from his plate. So it's like, earlier on, it's like, okay, what is this? Is, she was that her actually eating it, or was that him pretending that he was eating it but just saw her eating it? And because he was just satisfied with her being an illusion, it made me unsatisfied with my questions not being answered. But other than that, it was really good. After watching it all, I feel as though it was a little too long. it could have been done in a shorter amount of episodes, but it got the point across and definitely is a one for the feels. So if you want to feel something, definitely do it, because I would say this is one of the three visual works, being TV shows and movies, that made me almost want to cry. I've never really cried in watching a movie. I would say like the only other work that made me want to cry was The Color Purple. There was also another one too, but I just didn't, for whatever reason. So yeah, if you want to feel, if you want to hurt real good, this is definitely the one for you.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, you're a cold-hearted auto mail mechanic, so that makes sense. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, again, I don't actually know how this series ends. I don't actually know what that tear-jerking scene that everyone talks about at like the last episode. Like, I forgot. I think it's like the secret base is like the OST for the last episode, and it's like been performed in multiple places and different iterations of it. But everything that you said, Sam, about how Menma acts as a ghost, especially in the first three episodes, I didn't have a problem with. So it probably escalates from there. But also, I'm not that interested in like the what you would call like the soft set rule set of ghosts,
Yeah,
and
just
because
just like the rule said. Yeah,
one,
it's. I'm sorry, I
oh
didn't
no,
mean
it's
to
that
walk on you.
you know how it resolves itself, and I'm more of the idea that because I've kind of been spoiled to it, I know how it's going to go. But also, in the first three episodes, you don't actually know that Memma's not actually real. So it's actually played pretty well. Of is he actually breaking? Is that he's a recluse, and the hikikomori life is, abrasive to who he is as a person. Because when you see him as a child, he's a group leader. He's doing like super sentai
Yes.
poses. He's bubbly. He's childlike. And when you see him in the future, he's just a downer. He's actually he's pretty unlikable.
Oh, definitely. Oh, that brings a question. I'm glad that you brought up his hikikomori. So this is, I want to say, like the second or third anime that I've seen recently where the main and where the MC doesn't go to school, and the parents doesn't jump down his throat about it. I mean, for instance, with this guy, right? They don't really mention when he stopped going to school or why he just stopped going to school, right?
Right.
It's just that okay, he hasn't been going to school in some time, and when we see his dad's lackadaisical about it. I've seen this in Ray Zero and also in Wonder Egg Priority. In Wonder Egg Priority, it's understandable because it's right after trauma that the main character has experienced. So I can understand the parent being lenient in that aspect. But with Subaru, it's more or less he was I guess like his situation is very similar to Jintan, where he was the big man on campus in middle school, elementary school, and then he gets to high school, and it's completely different. So he becomes a recluse. The parents essentially do nothing to force him to go back to school. You being a teacher in the East right now, do you see that a lot happening in some of your classes where some students don't come for weeks at a time just because they don't feel like it?
Well, specifically, just speaking about Japanese culture, I mean, we talk about readily like a NEET, no education, no employment, no training. That's just something that is just part of their culture of collectivism. Like you're taken care of. You are expected to meet certain needs, but you're not expected to have ambitions. So him
Okay.
basically falling back on leaving the shut in life is completely acceptable because I do get your point that it is very culturally um, obscure that the main MC of our story is this recluse. And with the students that I see here, there's no failing. So they can skip school, they can skip assignments, they don't have to do anything to pass through secondary school. So, but that is kind of just the culture that I'm living in right now versus Japanese
Okay.
culture. So it's odd that, like you said, like that's just something that their Japanese culture deals with as a normalcy reaction to tragedy. Because I mean, even with small things like when I think we talked about this. What anime did we talk about this? But the idea that if a husband dies, then the woman becomes like the main breadwinner, and then she's respected more highly for that because she's taken the position of the head of the family. So even though there is like
Uh,
great gender equality, there is still the aspect of respect when it comes to the provider of a household. So it all falls into those culturally distinct things that we talk about very understood in anime. So yeah, I wasn't so abraced to that.
no, it was just that, again, because that's so counterculture for me, because over here in the States, especially like in my upbringing, it's like if because the parents are going to work, like no one's going to be there at home with you. And the thing is, like the mentality is like, if you don't go to school or work, you don't eat, essentially. Whereas over here in the States, the kids would make an effort to put on the ruse that they are at least going to school or that they are at least going to work. They just won't be home. They'll lie to their parents and go out into the streets with their other friends to sort of play hooky rather than just stay home.
Right,
Which,
for sure.
it's not always the best thing, because they can always go out and do things that they shouldn't be doing. But again, like I said, it's just that Western mentality. Whereas if you don't work, you don't eat. So don't be at home, or it's better for you to fake that you're going out to work rather than to stay at home and not do anything.
Yeah, there is a glimpse of that in episode 3 because Menma does get Jinta to get out of the house. She does provoke him enough to go back to school, but immediately he gets bullied by one of the other group members' friends. So you do get a
Mm-hmm.
small glimpse of why he basically stopped going to high school because there is like this small archetypal thing to every character in the series that I'm seeing a little bit of in these 3 episodes, but they are archetypes because they built themselves up around archetypes as a coping mechanism. So, like the character you're talking about with the chubby cheeks, he's the Bolin type from The Legend of Korra. He's the
Yes.
grizzly bear of the group. And there's like the tsundere girl with the twin pigtails. There's the girl with glasses. There's a very questionable member in the group that I think if we ever revisit this and talk about the full series
Yes.
and full, that I feel like there is a questionable member in this group, but we'll talk. Well, anyways, but that stood out to me. But again, like Jinta is like the fallen leader type, but he feels uniquely jaded or he feels uniquely broken in the situation because he could have confessed his love to Menma or he was in like that childhood affection versus love versus best friend kind of territory and he was asked where do you like Menma and he's like what no she's girl she got cooties kind of response and then she died so that's kind of his resolve in the story and that's where
Yes.
the 3 episode test comes into full focus is that now we're given what his arc is going to be. Everyone else probably gets an arc as well, but in these first 3 episodes, there's like a Pokemon kind of right to that might be Menma's wish that that's why she's haunting Jinta because she didn't catch a legendary Pokemon essentially. So that's also her arc as a ghost. So I'm very interested to see where the story goes. So I'm going to watch the rest of the episodes. But for me, this is definitely a resurrect. So since you already watched all the rest of the episodes, I'm guessing you give it a recommend to resurrect as well?
That's a good assumption. And I finished watching it knowing the twist, and at that point, I just wanted to see how well it was done, and that's why I said that I felt like it was a little too long because the twists that I was told about, they were saved until the end, and it was a good progression. But like I said, it just felt just a little long. But along the way, it was fun. Like they had a reference to a Code Academy as well as a reference to Wagnaria. So it was nice seeing those callbacks. It's like, oh, I watched that show. I watched that show. But yeah, I would say it should definitely be resurrected for what it does in portraying the feels and the guilt that all the characters have, especially their interpersonal stuff and the conflict that rises within the characters because of the initial scene. I forgot the initial scene in the secret base. So I definitely agree with you on this one.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I don't think one of the best animes of the 2010s really needs us to determine if it should be resurrected. It feels like a staple of the anime community. But yes, that closes up 10-year discussion of the first three episodes of Onahana, the flower that we saw that day. I'm actually interested to see what that subtitle actually means because maybe Menma is the flower, but that doesn't really make sense. But anyways, yeah. So anime season has started. Maybe we'll come back next episode to talk about our thoughts about the winter season because Jujutsu Kaisen finished up, probably has announced their second season because why not? As well as the other anime that got super hyped because we probably need to talk about Attack on Titan. But for right now, Sam, to close out the episode, do you have anything to say for us?
I'd like to reminisce about my cute summer days, but there was one in particular that seems to never come.